Oh, a recent book recommendation. Oh yeah, I'm about to give you another book recommendation, but the other one was science fictions. I think that one's a good one. It's pretty readable. It covers it covers so many good cases of science reproducibility failure. It covers a few medical ones. There's a really atrocious one which I'd never even heard of before. A lot of them I've heard of before, and a lot of the ones I've heard of weren't even covered in that book. But oh, I wish I had it on me. There was a bad one with these surgeons in Europe that claimed to have cracked pluripotent stem cells, which is the idea of like you take the like a two-sentence primer on stem cells is you have these generalized stem cells. A lot of them are like your bone marrow, and then they specialize. They specialize in like white blood cells, red blood cells in that case, and but they all branch in different signaling molecules that cause them to differentiate in certain ways. I think a lot of people know this. There's nervous system stem cells, which is of course really cool because in theory you could, people are excited that you could grow new neurons. There's cartilage ones, which sometimes people try to do and inject. But science fictions, yeah. So there is a particular case. I'm not going to spoil the book for you, but I'm just going to whet your appetite for it. Again, that's written by a UK professor, which I never heard of him. I came across it in the bookstore, and I was like, "Oh, this is," I cracked it open and I ended up buying it. The the one that was really damning because it was a medical one. It was in Europe, and there was a surgeon that got insane fame and fortune, and published on the cover of Lancet, which, if you don't know, is like the highest impact factor journal in the world, higher than Nature and Science because medical stuff is higher impact factor. And the Lancet, basically, he did stuff that was not reproducible, and there was a lot of. Not only was it not reproducible, he claimed to have figured out how to differentiate stem cells, and he was doing these really dramatic, aggressive surgeries on people, including this horrible case of this Russian ballerina who had some like laryngeal problem, and they did a overly aggressive surgery on her that was that they could have handled differently, but because the stuff was so overhyped, and she ended up losing like her entire larynx and throat, and she I think ended up dying. And there was a lot of like bad cases like that, and they were suppressing it, and the Lancet was covering it up for a while, like, or not covering up. They were circling their wagons around him. They were defending, and the institute that he got recruited at somewhere in Switzerland was defending him for a while. And oh god, don't get me started on Theranos. I was in Silicon Valley when that crap was happening, and I was actually interning at a venture capital firm at the time, and I could not believe nobody. I was on that I was on that shit in 2013. I everyone kept telling me about her, and she got on the cover of some magazine at that time. And I pulled up her talks, and she was not specific about anything, and I was like, what is wrong with people? It was like bad science fiction with no details. It was so bad. But yeah, I'm well familiar with the Theranos scandal. By the time it was like 2015, I was so over it, and then I was very satisfying to watch it collapse in 2017. But yeah, that was rough. To be surrounded by the BS sphere and SF at the time, it was so bad. I kind of was one of the things that pushed me out of venture capital. That and a couple other deals, and I was like, you guys aren't sorting at all. You're just lemmings. So anyway, I was a really low level, by the way, in venture capital. Don't get me. I didn't make any money or anything. I just thought maybe if I kept at it for 5, 10 years, maybe I could go into that eventually. Because I was under the stupid impression that having a ability to discern things at the scientific and medical level and was like how they make VC decisions in startups and biotech. And I was like, okay, I'll become as educated as possible, and then I'll go into that stuff and make good investment decisions. And it doesn't work like that at all. But I'm a gullible idiot, and a lot of my stories have that theme. So anyway, yes, yes, yeah, Theranos. Yeah, she was impressive. Um, did she's still going through federal courts? Or is she in federal prison? I don't remember how that ended up. You know what? That's fun. Let's look that up. Let's do some. It's lighter social stuff. Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes. Um, yeah, yeah. The guy was a Draper. I think I met him one time. So I actually worked in a venture capital syndicate that had a lot of the largest VC people that were participating because they were all trying to like prey on new university stuff. So the university ecosystem. I mean, I shouldn't be so judgmental. It's kind of the way things work, and it's good for a lot of people. But uh, sorry, let me just look this up. I can't multitask. Uh, Business is a game. It is a game, and that's why we're all about neuroscience and gaming here, fellas and ladies, if there are any. Elizabeth Holmes, um, indictment. So they're indicted by a grand jury last June with criminal charges. Okay, so they're still going to stand trial. U.S. versus Elizabeth Holmes, Department of Justice. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, yeah, and it's crazy because at the same time, okay, this is why I have a, this is why this stuff really pissed me off. At the same time that was going on, and she was still ramping up in terms of like funding and press. There was this guy I knew in Berkeley who, at the time, I think he was like in his late 20s. He had finished his PhD maybe a couple years out, and he was like 30, and he was running around, you know, trying to get this company off the ground. And he was like a really smart electrical engineer, but he had combined a chip with um, like a biological sensor. And I don't remember the specifics. If I talk about it more, it'll probably come back. But it was this idea of like you could get you have this test in like Walgreens or something, and and he could in theory specialize it for certain kinds of tests, not all kinds of tests, but certain kinds of tests. So you could do like he ended up doing many years later. I looked him up. He ended up applying it towards cardiac biomarkers, which are proteins in your muscle tissue of your heart that are released in the blood when you have a heart attack. So what are they called? Myoglobin, and there's other ones too, and that's what they use in the ER to like really tell if you had a heart attack or not. Because you know EKG and stuff like that they look at too, but that's like the confirmatory test. Anyway, that's what he ended up using, but at the time, and this was like many years later, but at the time, like in 2013, he was trying to get it. He was trying to apply towards cholesterol, which I thought was cool because you know a lot of older men, um, you know, have cholesterol problems. Women because they have estrogen are protected against a lot of cardiovascular issues until they're about 50, 55. But you know, men with their just like the lower estrogen and testosterone, they get some trade offs, including cardiovascular disease. So yeah, I thought it was cool. I was like, oh, you could go to Walgreens and just you know buy this test and get see your cholesterol over because right now it's you have to get a prescription from a doctor, then you have to go to another appointment, go to the lab, and they get a draw, and you have to get the from them. And there's a lot of problems because ultimately there's a lot of regulation in the United States about interpreting lab tests with a physician present. But I remember one of the things that he would get shot down when he presented these things is the Theranos thing. They're kind of like this lady's going to do all the tests with a drop of blood. And I was like, she hasn't yet. Anyway, I'm going to simmer down. Yeah, I know. I was that whole thing really was unbelievable.